Light heavyweight is a changing, and a couple of guys that want to keep it locked in the top 15 of this division. We have the former title challenger. Did he beat the greatest of all time?
Him.
I don't know. It's Dominick Reyes, the Devastator, taking on Superman. Oh, Ryan Spann. And Matt, for Ryan Spann, he's going to want to kiss you through the phone. He's going to want you to buy his video game complex thing. That's about all I have for Soulja Boy references. But for Ryan Spann, how this guy made middleweight, insane. I have no idea. And if you consider it, he was a big deal with the LFA as a very young man. He fought for the LFA middleweight championship back a number of years ago, lost to Leo Leite, the grappler. And at that time, he was 24. Leo was 37. So he doesn't win the middleweight shot. Then he goes out there and he fights for the light heavyweight title. He takes on another old grappler, and he wasn't that old at the time, but Robert Drysdale. The guy that owns the gym in Vegas.
The guy who trains Kevin Holland?
Yeah, he's a big deal. Well, Robert Drysdale ends up beating Ryan Spann, so Spann has to go back to the drawing board. Fights on Dana White's Contender Series. The old Achilles heel. Before it was known as that, Carl Robertson, I'm going to land those elbows when I'm trying to get the takedown, or when you're trying to get the takedown. Goes back with the LFA. Fights for the title one more time. It's the third title opportunity. Fights Alex Nicholson. Nicholson had already been in the UFC. Ryan Spann said, I'm finally winning the title. And he did. So a big win for Ryan Spann there. Alex Nicholson then went on to beat off a guy on Cam Soda.
What did he do?
Beat off a legend. Former UFC heavyweight champ Rico Rodriguez.
Wow.
Just beat him off on a paid website that's got smut on it.
Did you spend the money on it?
Not on that fight,
wow.
no. That was that Cam Soda Legends
Frank
card.
spent money to watch Rico Rodriguez beat off.
No, but I will tell you what. I did watch Cam Soda for one of those Fight Circus cards, so that was fun.
I'm sure that's what you told your wife when the credit card bill came in. This fight is a very interesting one, though, because for Dominick Reyes, is he really like the prince that was promised in the 205-pound division? Because it was wild, and it wasn't that long ago that he was that hyped up of a prospect in this division, where he had knocked out Chris Weidman. And that is the weird thing. It's weird to get a title shot at 205 beating Chris Weidman.
Whoa, what weight class was it at?
205 pounds. The one Chris Weidman never fought at until he fought Dominick Reyes. Now, again, I don't want to completely discredit that win because it was a very impressive first-round knockout against the former champion. But Chris Weidman wasn't in his prime, I think that's fair to say. And that was a weight class he had never competed in. And it's not like he was champion in that weight class like he was at middleweight. So for Dominick Reyes, it was weird for him to finally get to that title shot. And to be fair, the Volkan Oezdemir fight was a fight that a lot of people had down the middle. It was a fight that some people had for Oezdemir, some people had for Reyes. It was close. And I know this is something that people are going to roll their eyes at. It's something Reyes gets made fun of for. It's, hey, he was a really good athlete. But that is one of the things that stands out in his fighting style. He is a very athletic fighter. He does have good wrestling. He does have a very high work rate. And he's someone who does go out there and get after it. I just have a lot of questions about the amount of damage he's eaten, especially in his last two fights. And to be fair, there were quotes that Dominick Reyes had even come out and said, hey, I need to give my body a little bit of time to heal. I have had some very difficult fights, and I just need to give my brain a little bit of time off. And that's a really nice thing to hear from a fighter, because how many times do we hear from fighters like, I don't bring this up to poke fun or anything, but think about a guy like Bigfoot Silva, who it feels like every time we hear about him, he's in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. It's, hey, he's fighting this fighter, he's getting stopped. It's nice to see Dominick Reyes take the time off that I do feel like he needs, and I think this is a good fight for him to come back to against Ryan Spann.
And Reyes getting the opportunity to switch up his camp, and that's kind of weird. Him going from California, he's had his brothers in his corner in the past, brother Alex in the UFC at one point, but for Reyes, Teixeira, MMA and fitness, and listen, he's standing next to Alex Pereira, and they're the same height, so it says, but Pereira looks taller and bigger than Reyes, even though he's a weight class smaller. But for Reyes, definitely getting a good look over there. Now, with Pereira, he's going to walk you down, he's going to throw snappy leg kicks, he's going to throw the hooks. For Ryan Spann, he'll throw some kicks, but not many. He really does double up, triple up on his jab, and he has a laser right hand, and he's got a lot of speed in it, a lot of power. But if you hit Ryan Spann, you can cause him all sorts of issues. And I went through and, again, I watched a lot of Reyes tape. And if you look at the fight that he had against John Jones, a lot of people thought, okay, Reyes wins the first three, Jones wins the last two. I thought Reyes won round one, round three. Jones won round two. Jones round four, won five. 14-7 had it for Reyes on MMA decisions out of the voters. But the judges, and Joe Solis, who scored at 49-46 Jones, I don't know what fight he watched. He was way off the board.
The rounds were close, though, and that's my problem. You can have weird scorecards, but a lot of the rounds are close.
Joe Solis had a lot of weird scorecards in the past.
No, I know.
Weird with MMA.
For Reyes and Jones, a lot of those rounds were very close, though. It's not like either guy really differentiated themselves, got a knockdown, got a big takedown or anything. So a lot of those rounds were very close. It was a fight where, honestly, if you want to have it 4-1 for Reyes, I'm not going to disagree with you. If you want to have it 4-1 for Jones, I'm not going to, because the rounds were so tightly contested. Now, I thought Reyes did do enough in that fight. I was a little bit surprised to see Jon Jones coming out on the winning side, and I hate that old cliche, to win the title, you gotta go out there and take it from the champ. No, you don't. You know what you gotta do? You gotta win 3 of the 5 rounds. That's it. You gotta do the same as every other MMA fighter. And to Reyes' credit, I thought he did. But the problem is, he didn't get his moment of glory, and unfortunately he did have to fight 2 of the more damaging strikers in the 205-pound division, and he was on the losing side of both those fights. And not just the losing side, he ate a lot of damage in those fights.
And we know that. I mean, Reyes, before these 3 losses in a row, he was 12-0 as a pro, 5-0 as an amateur. He'd never tasted defeat. He loses to Jones. Predictably, you assume he's going to beat the older guy in Blachowicz.
He was a big favorite.
Blachowicz threw a crazy combo, punctuated it with uppercuts. His fight against Yuri Prochazka, the elbow, I mean, my goodness. And if you look at Reyes, he can be the type of guy that baits you in as a southpaw, throws that, like I said, Ryan Spann has a laser right hand, because his right hand comes straight down the pipe with power, and it's really quick. But Reyes throws a thudding left hand out of that southpaw stance, and it really catches a lot of guys into the power. And I could see him doing that against Ryan Spann. Spann's one of those guys, like the fight that I went back to and I kept thinking of was, he gets performance of the night against Anthony Smith in his first main event with the UFC. That was a 5-round main event. Anthony Smith, he's had a 3-round main event in the past against Rakic.
I just Dana White's sitting there in his office being like, we need someone to fill this main event. Who do we get? There's just Sean Shelby stands up. It's Anthony Smith.
He hits that boom box, and then automatically you have Mark Morrison playing, and it's Return to the Mac. But if you look at it from Ryan Spann, he eats a lunging left hand, and that's what causes him the trouble. Then Smith ends up getting the finish, and Smith gets up, yells at him, and people have to pick him up to get him out of the way. And Spann, earlier on in that fight, picked him up in the blue corner, or picked him up in the red corner, walked him all the way to the red corner. Anthony's like, what's going on? But Ryan Spann is a good grappler, but can struggle in grappling. Leo Leite, Robert Drysdale in the UFC against Ion Cutelaba. Cutelaba was going balls to the wall, dropped his head in and got submitted. Spann is a good grappler. Spann is a good striker. Spann struggles with... I know this sounds really stupid.
He's good offensively, but defensively he's struggling.
He can struggle defensively, and if you check his chin a couple of times, he can get on those wobbly legs. So this is a really tough fight if you're trying to make a pick on it.
Because I think that's the same point for both guys. This really is a whoever lands first is probably going to win type of fight. Because if Ryan Spann can damage Dominick Reyes early, kind of get those bad memories back into his head about his last 2 fights, I can see Ryan Spann having another stoppage victory on his hands. But same thing for Dominick Reyes. If he does that slide back left hand, drops Ryan Spann, I won't be surprised whatsoever.
And I would think Glover Teixeira and Alex Pereira are the perfect guys to get you ready for a fight against Ryan Spann, because Reyes already has good takedown defense and good grappling in his back pocket. The odds in this matchup: Spann opened a plus 170, he's a plus 185 underdog. Dominick Reyes opened minus 195, minus 230 or thereabouts. So we have a look at the topology votes, Matt. Surprise to us as they are to you. I'm going to say over under 70% Dominick Reyes.
I think they'll be over.
Let's see the palate cleanser. 1,019 total votes, 83% Reyes, 25% by decision, 67% by knockout. For the 17% that have Spann, 74% by knockout. I say the palate cleanser. Is this the palate cleanser fight? Do we forget about the bad memories of the 2 last losses to the 2 champs, Blachowicz and Prochazka? Or can Ryan Spann get the win?
It feels like every fighter on a losing streak has that one opponent where you go, okay, that's too far. Okay, I know they've lost a number of fights in a row, but they've lost to pretty good fighters. And to Dominick Reyes' credit, I know a lot of people like to roll their eyes. He doesn't have the most marketable personalities, maybe. Dominick Reyes, for the most part, just seems like a regular guy. He's not outlandish or anything like that. He's not going to go out there and get a lot of headlines, but he's a good, well-rounded fighter. And I do think the fact that he has a speed advantage, especially with his hands, is going to give Ryan Spann a lot of trouble. I do agree with you. When Spann starts to get hit, he doesn't always react in the most positive of ways. And Reyes, to his credit, was able to hurt Yuri at a few points throughout their fight. The difference is, when Yuri gets hurt, it just unlocks some deep demon within him, and then it really helps him become that fighter that he always can be. Whereas with Ryan Spann, I don't think he's going to become a better fighter once he does enter the firefight with a guy like Dominick Reyes. So I do expect Reyes to get back on the winning track, but the problem is, I don't really know where he goes from here. I know there's a lot of guys at 205 that he hasn't fought yet, but he's one of those tweeners right now where he was elite. He's able to have good fights with guys who are still in that elite conversation, but I guess it really does depend on how good he looks against Ryan Spann. If he goes in there, knocks him out early, maybe he'll rejoin that classification, but this will be a really important fight for both guys' careers.
Ryan Spann has a win over the brother of Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira.
He does.
I have a card here. You can't see it in the glare
of that fight.
Yeah, he looked really good in that fight. He also has a split decision win over Sam Alvey, but I consider the last few performances and the overall body of work. I like the speed out of Ryan Spann. I like the power out of Ryan Spann. I like the grappling out of Ryan Spann. And as a plus 185 underdog, and it's growing, yeah, I'll go with Ryan Spann in this matchup. So we're split on the pick. Matt going with Dominick Reyes. I'm going with the underdog that continues to grow. He's got the S on his chest, so you know. He looks down at the weigh-ins. He doesn't like to make eye contact. I've got Spann. Matt's got the Devastator. Don't love the nickname. Big-time fights coming up this weekend. Pereira versus Adesanya. The trilogy matchup in the main event. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.